Life as We Know It with Tom Walton.
The stakes could not have been higher. International diplomacy requires bold, decisive action, and the last thing I wanted to do was embarrass the State Department or my country. I had to keep telling myself, the Russians are coming, the Russians are coming. Perhaps I overdramatized the significance of the events of that warm April day in 1982, but at the time I felt the weight of the nation on my shoulders. I was working back then for the Monterey Peninsula Herald, a block communications newspaper in Monterey, California. I was accustomed to VIP visitors. The Monterey Peninsula is one of the most beautiful places on the planet. Celebrities and politicians were always finding reasons to visit there. Even the Soviets wanted to come see it. When a delegation from the old Soviet Union news agency TASS came to America for a diplomatic tour, they insisted on visiting Monterey. I agreed to be their host. The morning they arrived, our carefully crafted schedule was thrown off when the Director General announced he wanted to go scuba diving in Monterey Bay. What a sight it was to see him emerge from a dive shop in full scuba gear, wetsuit, mask, air tank, and flippers, and flop his way to the surf. He swam, everybody else watched. Properly salted, the general was ready for lunch, where for 3 hours the Russian vodka flowed freely, and the toasts became increasingly difficult to comprehend as each side tried to outdo the other. It was no contest. The Russians wrote the book on toasts. They kept throwing back the Stolichnaya and saluting our two nations' quest for peace, nuclear sanity, the prosperity of our respective families, the cable cars in San Francisco, and Vladivostok in the spring. Finally, the toasts ended. I offered them a tour of our newspaper where we exchanged gifts. The general gave me a swell TASS lapel pin, and I gave him a promotional coffee mug, bearing the slogan our newspaper had adopted when we switched from evening publication to AM. My gift to him was a mug that bore this message: "You'll love us in the morning." I figured if he was going to be offended, it probably wouldn't be until the Stolies wore off, and by then he'd be on his way back to San Francisco. Instead, we encountered a far different problem. Of all days, the plumbing in the men's room had backed up and it was unusable. After all that vodka, the Soviets were not amused. Only the women's restroom was available. I caught a break. The sign on the ladies' bathroom door said dames. The Soviets had no idea what dames meant and strolled right in. I stood guard at the door lest a female employee innocently wander in and spark an international incident. It was in everybody's best interest at that point that the Herald was a vodka-free facility. Our guests, all of them a bit giddy, could sleep in their limo on the ride back to the Bay Area. But as a working stiff, if you'll pardon the expression, I still had a newspaper to publish. That experience was 4 decades ago, but I recall every detail vividly, except maybe 1 or 2 of my toasts. I remember thinking as the Russians departed, "General, I hope you'll love us in the morning."
Life as We Know It is written and hosted by Tom Walton and is a production of WGTE Public Media. Life as We Know It with Tom Walton can be heard on WGTE FM 91 every Monday afternoon during All Things Considered at 5:44 p.m. Or hear past episodes at wgte.org/life.